Today we are going to study the new topic that is the offences relating to elections. So first of all, we will discuss that what are the election offences. This chapter of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita the actually election offences are deals under the chapter 9 of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. This chapter actually deals with the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita related to the crimes to the elections. As you see that in a democracy, election must be very fair, must be free and without any pressure, without cheating. But sometimes what happens that people used to cheat or influence the voters in a very wrong way. So what is the law creates? The law creates the election offences to protect the purity of the election process. So what chapter 9 says, that the chapter 9 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita talks about the offences which are relating to elections. So first of all, we will discuss that what are the offences or what are the election offences. Let us introduce the election offences. The election offences means that any illegal act done before, during, or after an election to unfairly influences the voters or to disturb the proper conduct of the election. So, what is the meaning of election offense? Election means it is an illegal act. That illegal act must have been done before, during, or after the election. Why? To unfairly influences the voter or to disturb the proper conduct of the elections. Now the question is, why does the law exist relating to the election of offenses? Because elections are the very serious in the democracy of India, and that can be disturbed by money power, by muscle power, by threat or by violence, by bribing voters or fake voting. So false information can also be provided, misuse of the government machineries. So if these crimes are get punished, the election will be obviously fair. So what is the purpose of section chapter 9 of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita? So this chapter actually ensures the clean elections. Or what else it ensures? It ensures the honest voting. It ensures no bribing or no threat. Ensures no cheating, no fraud. It ensures the protection of voters. It ensures the rights of the respect for the democratic rights. So, if there will be a chapter on election offences, so the election will be very clean, will be very on. The voting will be very honest. There will be no bribery, threat, etc. Now, who commits these election offences? Actually, these election offences is committed during the election processes. These offences can be committed by any candidate, by any party worker, by any voter, by any election officers, by influential persons, by any middleman. If so, what we can say that if any act or if they done any act or do any wrongs during the elections, they can be punished. So we can now conclude that when do the elections offences happen? The election offences happen before the election. Suppose before the election, if someone bribes to vote, why you try to bribes the voters, or if someone promises some benefits to the voters, if someone threatens to vote for a party, that these are the election offences which are done before the elections. The election offences can also be done during the elections. Suppose, for example, booth capturing, fake voting, and preventing people from voting are some of the examples of election offences which are done during the elections. There are also election offences which are done after the elections. For example, destroying records of the elections, making false accounting, or threaten the winners of, or the threaten the losers of the elections. These offenses comes under the elections offenses. So now we can understand that why election, what are the now we can conclude that what are the election offenses, who commit the elections offenses, and why there is a law, and what is the purpose of the law of relating to the elections offenses. So this chapter, that is the section chapter 9 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita of covers definitions and offenses such as bribery, undue influence, personation, false statements, illegal expenses, and failure to maintain elections accounts. So before we go for this to learn about these offenses, first we have to understand some definition or learn some definitions that are covered under section 169. First definition is the definition of the candidate. That in an election process, who will be known as the candidate? Candidate is no one but a person formally nominated for any election. If a person is officially, if a person is formally nominated for any elections, that is called, he is known by the name of candidate. Okay. Next is, what is electoral right? So electoral right includes the right to stand or not to stand as a candidate, or it also includes to withdraw the candidature, to withdraw the vote, or not to vote. So electoral rights covers these rights, that right to stand or not to stand, that if anyone do not want to stand in an election, or if anyone wants to stand in an election, or anyone wants to vote or do not wants to vote, this is called an electoral right. Third one, that it protects the autonomy of voter and candidates. So this definition should be remembered while studying the elections offenses. So, as we have already discussed about that, there are various kinds of elections offenses like bribery, undue influence, personations, illegal payments, false statements, interference with the election duty, disorderly conduct near polling stations, misconduct by government officers, illegal hiring of vehicles. So, first of all, the most common election offense is the bribery, that is covered under section 170. So first we will study the meaning and the scope of bribery. For if we take in a very simple word, then what is bribery? What is bribery? So we can conclude that bribery is giving giving or offering some money, gifts, giving and offering of services, giving any promises. What for what purpose? To influence a person to vote or not to vote for a particular candidate. So what is bribery? Bribery is nothing but giving money, giving gifts, giving benefits, and providing some giving promises to influence a person. So main element of bribery is that there should be something. Something means for giving, like money, gifts, and benefits, for purpose of bribery to influence a vote or influence a person to vote or not to vote for a particular candidate. So this is a very, actually bribery is a very serious offense in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Why? Because um, why bribery is a very serious offense under Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita? Because if there will be a bribery, um, there will be a it will destroy the free choice, or it will correct the democracy. So bribery is a serious offense under Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. So in a very simple meaning, we can say that bribery includes giving or accepting gratification to induce or reward the exercise of electoral rights. Means it bribery, it a offering or giving something valuable to the voter to change his voting decision. If any voter is going to change his voting decision or electoral right, by giving something in the form of money, in the form of gifts, then or in the form of any reward, that will be called as bribery. So gratification can be monetary or any form of advantage. Okay, so why bribery is given? Bribery is given to buy the voters choice. If we are able to buy the voters choice, that will be a some that will be that will affect the win of the that will affect the election. So what bribery includes? Bribery includes, and we can see that it includes the money. Suppose giving cash to the families of the voters, giving an envelope of 500 or 1,000 rupees to the family of voters or to the voters, or it can be a giving gift. It can be in the form of gifts or things like alcohol, like saris, providing groceries, providing bicycles, providing cookers, or means bribery is anything that can influence the rights, that can influence the voting or the choice of voting. That bribery can also be in the form of services, like if anyone promises to give a job, if anyone promises to give a contract, if anyone, for example, ready to giving a free transport, that also comes under the bribery. So, and also if anyone is promising for your future benefits, that if you vote for me, I will give you a money after this election, that is also covered under the bribery. So bribery can be, there are two types of actually bribery. Bribery can be direct and bribery can be indirect. There, if the statement is direct, for example, that if you give the vote to a particular candidate, I will give you 500 rupees, that means there is a direct bribery. But there are also indirect bribery. For example, if you give money and not saying anything to a leader to distribute, that is an indirect bribery. For example, if you are paying NGOs or paying groups to influence voters, so that is called an indirect bribery. So there are two types of bribery: direct briberies and indirect briberies. So, and also bribery can also be done, includes a negative acts. For example, it is not that it is not that if you are saying that please vote for the particular candidates, I will give you 500 rupees. But the statement can also be that if I will pay you 500 rupees, you will not vote for a particular person. So the bribery can be for the negative acts also. Or it can be that uh, if you stop people from voting, going for a vote, and give him money or give him gifts, that also covered under the bribery. So why bribery is illegal under this Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita? Because it destroys the free choice of voters, and it also corrupts democracy. So these are the things which are covered. These are the actually main points why which bribery is illegal. For example, poor voters get exploited, and the candidates who are very rich, they get the unfair advantages, and the candidate who are very honest, they suffer from this bribery. So let's just take an examples of bribery. For example, let's take first example is for example, a party workers give 1,000 rupees of the each of the family of voters, that is bribery. If a candidate distributes saris and liquor in the slums, for example, that is bribery. So gratification can be obviously monetary and any form of advantage. It includes attempts to offer or obtain gratification. Public policy declarations or promises of public actions are not bribery. Means what are not what will not be covered by the bribery? If there is any public policy declarations or promises of public action, that will not be covered under bribery. What is the legal interpretation of bribery? So, acceptance of gratification, even without intention to act, is stated as acceptance. If you do not have any intention to accept the gratification, even though you are accepting the gratification, that will be the act will be treated as acceptance, and that will be an bribery. So under this bribery, both giver and receiver are punishable. Okay, so bribery undermines the free and fair elections. Next kind of election offenses is the undue influence. First, obviously, we will learn what is the meaning. We will try to understand the meaning of undue influence. Undue influence means if you are wrongfully pressuring a voter, if you are wrongfully pressuring a voter to vote for someone or to stop them from voting freely. So, what are the main elements of undue influence? That if someone wrongfully pressuring a voter, or for what, to vote someone or to stop them from voting freely, that will be known as undue influence. So any voluntary interference with the free exercise of electoral right will be known as undue influence. So undue influence covers threats, it covers caution, it covers spiritual intimidation. So how it is different from the bribery? So anyone can get confused with the bribery and between the bribery and undue influence. So undue influence is not a bribery. It is different from the bribery, as bribery is giving something, whereas under undue influence, only pressure, coercion, force, threat, and violence are used. So very simply, if someone acts, if any act creates any fear, or if any act creates any pressure, threat, violence, spiritual pressure, social pressure, or anyone interferes with the free choice of votes, it is called as undue influence. So what are the main elements of the undue influence? First element of undue influence is obviously that a person is using a force or a threat. Second, that he is creating a fear. The fear can be a physical fear, social fear, religious fear, economic fear. Third one, that he is interfering with the voters' freedom. And also he's stopping a person from voters' rights. So these are the four basic elements which are of which four basic elements of undue influence. First is the using a threat or a force. Second is creating a fear. Third one is interfering with a person voters' right, and last one is stopping them or stopping a voter from exercising his electoral rights. So it protects the voters' independence during elections. There are many forms of first of all, let's take an examples of undue influence. That if anyone is threatening a voter or candidate with the harm, so that will be a undue influence. If anyone influencing a voter by invoking divine displeasure, that will be undue influence. And lawful actions, if anyone taking a lawful action without intent to interfere, are not undue influence. So any lawful actions without the intention to interfere are not undue influence. And let's understand more deeply about undue influence under in the this election offenses, that what are the forms of undue influence, so that you will be uh, um, you will be understood, that you will understand what is undue influence. First of all, there should be a threat, violence, fear, or force. Threat can be a physical harm, for example, threatening, if someone is threatening to beat someone, if someone is threatening to kill someone, if someone is threatening to injure a person, that will be a undue influence. For example, if you don't vote for us, you will be beaten. So what is this? This is an undue influence. So if someone is threatening to for the property, for example, if you don't vote for us, we will burn your house. So what, this is kind of a threat. This is called as a what this is a kind of a threat relating to property, and it is covered under the undue influence. If someone threat to your social status, For example, if you don't vote for us, we will boycott you. So boycotting is a threat to the social status, and it will be covered under undue influence. If someone is creating a religious pressure, for example, if your religion says you must support this candidate, so you are creating a religious pressure on a person to vote for a particular candidate, that you must vote for a particular candidate because it belongs to your religion. That will be also be covered under undue influence. Next, if you are creating an economic pressure, if someone is not economically sound, for example, there are employers, and if forcing a workers for a vote for a particular party, or there is a contractor who is threatening the laborers to vote for a particular party, that will also be covered under undue influence. Next, if someone is creating an emotional pressure, that will also be covered by the undue influence. For example, if you really love your village, for example, if someone says to a voter that if you really love your village, please vote for that a particular party, that will also be covered under undue influence. And last, if anyone threaten the public servant, for example, um, uh, threatening a public servant, for example, the police officer were told to support a ruling party, that will also be covered under undue influence. So we have studied two election offenses. First is the bribery, and second one is the undue influence. Let's take a difference between the both, the bribery and undue influence. First, bribery. In bribery, you offer someone to the voter, or you give gifts, or you offer someone some promises, service, money to the voter. But in under undue influence, you do not offer or give something, but you use force, or you use for pressure, you use violence, you use threat to a particular vote so that he can vote for a particular purpose. So bribery is a positive benefit, we can say that some a person is providing benefit to the voter to vote for a particular person, while undue influence is a negative pressure. That negative means it is person is using a force or threat. So bribery means, you can say that, vote and take, and undue influence, you can say that vote or face the consequences. So here in the bribery, there is a reward, or the material reward, we can say that, but in this undue influence, there is a physical and social fear. But both bribery and undue influence are illegal under this chapter section 9 of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita relating to election offense. Let's take a very simple example. For example, a Muslim threatens a villagers to vote for a particular party, that is undue influence. So we have studied a second type of election offense, that is undue influence. Now, third type of election offense is the personation and at election. Personation at election. The section which covered the personation at election is section 172. Now, first of all, we will study, or we will understand the meaning of personation at election. What do you mean by the personation? That when someone votes in the name of another person. In a very simple means that voting in the name of another person, whether living or dead. Means if you are voting for anyone, for a living person or a dead person, that is called as personation at elections. So if you are voting under a fictitious name also, that is also called as personation at election. Means that you are pretending to be someone else, or you can say that you are cheating to with the identity of another person in the election process. So it is also sometimes called as fake votings or impersonation voting. So what is impersonation? That if you are voting using the another person's identity, or when you are when or voting when you are not legally allowed to vote, these two conditions, if these two conditions are fulfilled, then it is called as personation at elections. For example, if you are voting more than once. Okay. Now, in personation at elections, abetting or attempting a personation is also punishable. And also, proxy voting allowed only if authorized by what? Means, if there is a proxy voting, which is allowed if they are authorized by law. So, what personation includes? We can say that if someone is taking someone's identity and vote for particular party, or if someone is using another person's slip, if someone is using then that person's slips, and if any person is out of station and another person using the identity of that person, these are also covered under the personation at elections. More voting more than once, as we have already discussed, that one person voting twice, or using two voter IDs, or voting in two polling stations, that is illegal. So at last we can say that there is a rule that one person is one vote, and if there is no one person and one vote rule, then it will be covered under the personation at elections. It is also if, for example, if someone is tried to be someone, if someone is pretending to be someone else, that is also a personation at election. For example, using fake names, giving false signatures. So these are also called as personation. Whether helping someone in voting illegally will be covered by personation, yes. If you are helping a person to cast a vote who is not registered, that also be covered and personation in elections. For example, if you are forcing a police of polling officers to mark a wrong names of, if you are capturing a booth for the fake voters, that will also be covered by the personation and election. And you should, and one thing should also be remember, that if anyone who is assisting in these personation and election will also be punished in under this section. So if you are using a government ID, for example, wrongfully, that will also be covered under personation elections. So personation is at elections is now a serious crime. Why? Because it's somewhere it destroys, everywhere it destroys the fair elections, and it also changes the real result. And if there is a one wrong vote, then obviously one person's voice stolen, and it leads to a large scale rigging. It promotes cheating, it promotes booth capturing, it promotes corruptions. So that is why personation in election is a serious crime. So let's also take one more example. For example, a man votes using his brother's ID who is already dead. That will be a personation at elections. So in under next section in next sections, there are the punishment are provided for bribery, that is section 173. If a person will be imprisoned up to 1 year, or fine, or both. Treating, for example, food, drink and entertainment as gratification will be punished with a fine only. Means if you are treating anyone, giving food, drink, entertainment or gratification, that will be punished under with a fine only. What is the main purpose of punishing for bribery? Because it emphasizes the seriousness of influencing voters with food or events. And then in next section, section 174, punishment for undue influence or personation is given. If any person do the offense of undue influence or in election process or personation at elections, that and then he will be imprisoned up to 1 year, or fine, or both. And it applies to all acts under section 171 and 172. Now let's move towards the next form of election offense, that is called as false statement at elections. What are the false statement at elections? First, we will discuss the meaning of false statement. Means if any during the elections, means now we have understood that election offenses can be done before elections, during elections and after elections. The false statement at elections are the elections offenses which are done during the election process during the elections. So for example, if some people and candidates try to win votes by making lies or providing wrong information, providing false news, providing fake allegations, providing misleading facts. So these are called as a making false statements or spreading misinformation during elections. So this is also a serious offense under Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. So we can say that if you are telling lies about a particular candidate who belongs to a particular party, or if you are hurting someone's reputation of a particular candidate, or influencing the voters wrongfully that a particular candidate is not suiting our religion, village. So these all statements covered under this section 175. But if a person who knowingly spread this false information will be covered under this section, and he will be punishable. That will be a punishable suits. For example, people provide fake news on social media. For example, they edited videos, they make a wrong statements, they make false claims, or they make a wrong allegations about the candidate. These are also be covered by this section. And for example, if anyone make a false information about a party's policy, for example, providing a fake documents regarding the opposite party's policies, providing a fake letters, these will also be covered under this section. So publishing false statement about a candidate personal conduct, character or conduct will be covered under this section 175. But it must be made with the intent to affect the election results. So what should be the intention of a person? The intention should be to affect the election results, and it applies only to statements presented at facts. Means this section only applies to the false statements, and this offense of false statements at elections is punishable with fine. So if anyone is making a false statements at elections, he will be punishable with fine. Why false statements are illegal? Because false statement actually cheat voters, and they destroy the fairness in elections. They damage the candidate's reputation. They create a confusion. They create a fear. They affect the free decision making. They affect the hatred between the groups. That is why these false statements are illegal under Chapter 9 of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. For example, if a party posts a fake video showing an opponent resulting in a religion, so this will also be covered under these sections. Next section is 176, that is illegal payment and expenses. Illegal payments and elections means these are the election offenses which are done by and during the elections. And during elections, what happens that candidates actually are allowed only to spend a specific amount of money, but they spend money. So they spend a money in a very secret and dishonest or prohibited ways. All these payments and expenses are covered under section 173. So if any payment is illegal, or if any illegal expenses is made during elections, that will covered under this offense. So if any illegal payment is made in the form money, or any money or benefit is taken to influence the voters or to do act illegal, that will be covered under this section. For example, giving cash, giving gifts, giving paying for the travel, or paying for the campaign activity. For example, hiring loudspeakers without the permission, if transporting voters in a private transport vehicles, if someone is giving party funds secretly. So all these will be covered under the illegal payments and expenses. So incurring elections relating expenses without written authority of candidate. So if there is no written authority of the candidate and the elections and money is spent, illegal payments are made and expenses are made, that will be covered all under this section 176. It includes advertisement also, it includes meetings, circulars, or any promotional activity. So what is the punishment of these illegal payments and expenses? Obviously the person will have to pay a fine of 10,000 rupees, and small expenses if they have made, so they are allowed if to pay 10 rupees or less than 10 rupees if approved within 10 days. Next section is 177, failure to maintain election accounts. That obviously the candidate must maintain a detailed expenses account for a particular election, or as required by law. If he is not maintaining any expenses accounts as required by rule, then there will be an imposition of fine of 5,000 rupees to the candidate. Why this imposition of 5,000 rupees? Because it first ensures transparency in election financing. So today we have studied the election offences chapter of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Thank you.